Why don't you just do a blog, Mike? Said no one. And that's a well-worded question, no one. I do a blog, but I don't just do a blog. I write it down, like you do, and then I perform it, like you don't. So it's a well-worded but still rather dim question. Why would I make more than the bare minimum effort? Why activate facial and vocal muscles when you can do it all from your fat little fingers? Well, grasshopper, because making the effort is a good thing. See page 1, dedication. It's all you need. But I think it's important to be as loyal as possible to the original format of your articulations. By which I mean, say what you think. And you don't think in text, do you? In letters. No one has ever stubbed their toe and then wondered how to spell ouch. You can get a song stuck in your head, but you can't get a font stuck in your head unless it's during a particularly disastrous christening. But no, try it. Imagine, think of the image of a line of poetry. Now try and get it stuck in your head. It's impossible, because you don't think in text. You have to map it in time before you can perform it in space. These three symbols don't mean one of those things. These three symbols mean cow, and cow means one of those things. Because I do use text, I use text for this. I don't just press record and then start ranting. I'd be all over the place, even more all over the place than I ordinarily am. But I use text to structure my arguments and my ideas ahead of time, much like an architect uses drawings. To me, an artist with nothing but text is like a builder with nothing but blueprints. It's not actually a product yet. It's just you reminding yourself of how to make one. No one finds blueprints more beautiful than buildings. And yet, for some reason, millions of people think books are better than films. Probably because the reader does the building, right? The reader supplies the building materials, except they don't. They supply imaginary building materials, and then they imagine themselves magically bolting them together. This is why it's so tiresome to watch a film with someone who has read the book. Not once do they say, oh, that's different from my interpretation of the film, of the book, but I suppose I'm okay with that. No, it's always, this wasn't like this, and this was that, and this, and fucking blah, flap, because you've already directed this movie in your head. You produced it, and lit it, and shot it, and dubbed it, and starred in every role, and you think your version was better. Well, fancy that. And by the way, you heavily edited the script. You haven't got the whole thing memorised. You probably couldn't even recite a single paragraph of it. You've got a sense of it, an auditory, visual experience with big chunks missing and important things changed. The version you have in your head is a compressed, fragmented clusterfuck that only begins to make sense within the insulated confines of your own flabbergasted noggin. And until you can articulate them into a medium by which at least one other person can understand it, kindly leave your poxy opinions in whichever abdominal organ you may have found them. What I'm trying to say is, text is by no means the purest way to record or present your articulations. Nor obviously is it the most complex. It's a rather arbitrary moment in the development of expressive media. I have no problem with text. As I say, I use it. It has its place. But what really gets my goat, what really poaches my bullock, what really disfigures my prize buffalo, is people who think that reading long strings of text, particularly printed on the shredded bodies of trees, makes them intellectually superior to people who don't. Those of us who prefer to watch images and listen to sounds and, heaven forbid, talk to each other. Readers, you might call them. But again, I don't have a problem with readers, just these elitist readers, graphocentrists, people who scoff pompously at you if you don't read books. These are people who do not seek either purity nor complexity, neither nature nor progress. They just want to live in a small window of technology. They're like the Amish. They're a lot like the Amish, except they're fucking everywhere, and they're dicks about it. In principle, I don't have a problem with the Amish, but if I meet an Amish guy who calls me an idiot for not being Amish, damn skippy that guy's getting ranted at. Oh, it's like that John Waters quote, that laughably irresponsible line that you hear so often hooted by pseudo-intellectual posers. You know the one, if you go home with someone and they don't have books, don't fuck them. Right, this won't be a sexually rewarding relationship because this person hasn't got a collection of historical relics on a shelf. It's what you might choose to call a nonce sequitur. Don't drink the water unless you can see a sundial. Don't touch the thermostat unless there's a dream catcher over the toilet. If you go home with someone and they don't have sex organs, don't write to them. People who think like this have stunted imaginations. They don't understand what creativity is, much in the same way a psychopath doesn't understand what empathy is. This is why psychopaths mistake Phil Collins for emotion. It's why elitist readers will call them psychographs. Very often mistake the environments they conjure in their heads while reading for creativity. They think they're geniuses for being able to imagine things described to them. They don't realise most of us can do that on our own without holding the hand of an author. Watch this. There's a man tobogganing down the Euphrates with an eagle in a sack. He's fleeing from his home business, which he infested with cobras for the insurance money. The eagle's an old friend. Boom, just like that, from whole cloth. And do you know what else I can do with these ordinary powers of mine? I can watch TV with them, and I can reimagine the things I'm seeing and run with the reimagination and converse about it with the other people watching it. Readers can't. They're terrified that if they receive actual sensual stimulation, they'll lose their grip on the frail shred of creativity they have. They're like homophobes. They resent people who are comfortable with their imaginations. They call TV brainwashing. No, brainwashing has no off switch, dickhead, let alone a channel changer. The lines were a lot less blurred back in the day, back in the 80s, when a waffle waitress famously asked Bill Hicks, "What are you reading for?" She may have been onto something, Bill, because the correct answer would have been, "'Cause it's the 80s, there's no internet, all I have's 4 TV channels and like 1 million different books." If you only had the option of 4 different books you could read at any given moment, you would be the first to point out how banal and stupid reading is. But of course, nowadays we have like 1,000 TV channels and an ever-growingly, unwatchably vast archive of internet videos. But this has done nothing to sway the psychograph bias. You notice very few of them trying to make the argument books are intellectually superior to the internet, because you know how dead wrong they would be. There are books on the internet, there's no internet in books. So instead they endeavour to tell us that screens are bad and paper is good. Moving talking images are bad and one-dimensional strings of tiny black shapes are good. The combined efforts of a well-oiled team of audiovisual artists is in principle less intellectually valid than the rattling fingertips of some anthrophobic maladroit shut-in. And don't forget, I am one of those anthrophobic maladroit shut-ins. I am a writer. I understand the effort and passion that necessarily goes into creating that first draft. But I also understand that it takes an order of magnitude more effort and passion to create a truly immersive audiovisual experience comparable to the one you thought of before you wrote it down. And if effort and passion is the point, and by golly it is, then by golly why would you not use all the effort and passion at your disposal? And why, in the name of Jupiter's hand-me-down big boy pants, would you scoff at those who do? Because you've confused yourself. You can't see the pyramid for the hieroglyphs. It's snobbery, basically. Malappropriated snobbery. Reading is seen as a demure, thoughtful activity, and you can't fail to notice the stigma we put on watching TV. You're a couch potato. You're a lazy, fat zombie. Meanwhile, I don't see many people exercising while reading books. At least you can walk with a smartphone, right? And yet you often hear it said, often coincidentally by psychographic people, that people are zombies these days, just walking around staring at their phones, not even glancing up at the world around them. Meanwhile, reading involves exactly the same paralysis. It just happens to be old-fashioned. I think fashion is largely the point. In a world where text is everywhere, very often in many cases digitized into virtual reality, an unwieldy cuboid of pulped timber is really nothing more than a fashion accessory. A particularly retro one at that. New age fun with a vintage feel. To read books, you have to be either a Luddite or a hipster. Anything but the present. Bear in mind the economic context, obviously. If all you can afford is books, by all means read books. If that's your best technology, by all means revere it as such. But if you can afford a computer and the internet, which you can because, hi, and yet you're still singing the praises of books, it's rather like you're encouraging us to ride a donkey to work more often because you're not entirely convinced of the safety of the supersonic jet plane you're currently in. That's not a power move. That's not highbrow in any way. That's insulting. Especially to people who don't even have the donkey. You should get a Kindle. You get a Kindle, then you'll finally see there's a difference between a novel and a book. On a Kindle you can have your precious novels without clinging on to these archaic ornaments you call books. You can join the modern age and still pat yourself on the back for reading long things. Length may be the point. Novels are typically longer and more time-consuming than films. For some reason, this is seen as a good thing. But do you know what's even longer? The internet. It gets longer at a faster rate than you can read it. It's functionally infinite. So you see the lines are getting blurred. There's scarcely a difference between someone reading novels on a Kindle and someone reading websites on a tablet. In a generation or two, the very idea of a book will be as arcane and silly as a scroll. Everyone will find psychographs as laughable as I currently do. I'm not saying I'm ahead of my time. I'm just saying a great fucking deal of you are way behind yours, and it's all relative. So technically, yeah, I'm better than you. You're not better than me. Goodbye, and do fuck off.